Early in the morning on October 3, 1986, a Soviet strategic submarine designated K-219 cruised 85 meters below the surface of the Sargasso Sea. The vessel carried 2 nuclear reactors and 16 intercontinental ballistic missiles, equipped with 34 nuclear warheads. Collectively, this one ship held enough energy to incinerate the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. During the Cold War, the U.S. Navy shifted to an aggressive strategy, forward deploying attack submarines to trail Soviet vessels from the moment they left port. As this map shows, K-219's patrol sector tightly overlapped with active U.S. Navy transit lanes, making any attempt to surface a major tactical risk. K-219 was a mobile launch platform positioned hundreds of miles off the coast of Bermuda. It was designed to keep Washington, D.C. and New York City under a permanent threat of a short-flight nuclear strike. The submarine's primary vulnerability was the chemical composition of its RSM-25 missiles. These missiles used hypergolic fuels that ignite on contact, producing lethal nitrogen dioxide gas. Technicians ignored moisture warnings in Tube 6 before departure. During a deep dive, degraded hatch seals failed. Salt water rushed in, crushing the tanks together and initiating a violent chemical reaction. When the alarms flashed red in the control room, Captain Igor Britanov faced a dilemma. Surfacing would expose the ship to the American anti-submarine screen, so he ordered auxiliary pumps to drain the tube, hoping to stabilize the pressure before the chemicals reached a flashpoint. By prioritizing mission secrecy over the reported seal failure, the Soviet command had left the crew trapped inside a ticking chemical time bomb. At 0038 hours, the mixture reached its flashpoint. The resulting explosion blew the outer hatch off its hinges and tore downward through the pressure hull. The blast killed 2 sailors, releasing a pressurized orange cloud of nitrogen dioxide. Reacting with moisture to form deadly nitric acid, the toxic gas surged through the ventilation trunks into adjacent compartments, trapping the crew in a rapidly failing ship. The corrosive mist settled over the electronics, melting insulation and triggering short circuits across the main DC power lines. The propulsion turbines tripped, and the submarine began to sink backward into the abyss. The watertight design meant to protect the crew now acted as a sealed gas chamber, concentrating the toxic orange clouds within the lower compartments. Captain Britanov ordered an emergency blow of all ballast tanks, forcing the sinking hull back to the surface in a massive geyser of foam. Even on the surface, a new crisis emerged. The fire in the missile bay reached temperatures of 800 degrees Celsius, directly adjacent to the port-side nuclear reactor. The electrical failures had killed the primary coolant pumps. The automated control rods were supposed to drop into the core to stop the fission process, but the intense heat had warped the metal guide tracks, jamming the rods in place. The only way to prevent a meltdown was to send someone into the irradiated reactor compartment to lower the rods manually. Officer Nikolai Belikov and 20-year-old seaman Sergei Preminin entered the space, equipped only with primitive protective gear and 40-minute oxygen canisters. Working in 60-degree heat, they used a mechanical T-bar wrench to turn the gears millimeter by millimeter. After Belikov collapsed from heat exhaustion, Preminin continued alone, successfully lowering the final rods to shut down the core. When Preminin tried to exit, the crew found the hatch was immovably stuck. The high air pressure inside the reactor room and the heat-warped steel frame had sealed the door. Preminin suffocated in the dark after his oxygen ran out. The automated safety systems had failed. In the end, the containment of the core came down to Preminin's physical endurance and a single mechanical wrench. As the submarine wallowed on the surface venting toxic smoke, U.S. Navy P-3C Orion aircraft arrived to monitor the scene. The Pentagon scrambled attack submarines to the area, fearing a major radiation leak into the Gulf Stream. In a break from traditional Soviet secrecy, Mikhail Gorbachev chose to contact President Reagan directly via the hotline. He notified the White House of the accident and provided assurances that the reactors were secure. Most of the crew was evacuated to Soviet merchant ships, but the attempt to tow K-219 back to port failed when the tow line snapped. Captain Britanov was the last to leave the vessel before it slipped beneath the waves. K-219 now rests 18,000 feet deep in the Hatteras Basin, remaining on the ocean floor alongside its nuclear reactors, 14 missiles, and the body of Sergei Preminin.
The disaster occurred just 5 days before the historic Reykjavik Summit. Gorbachev's decision to be transparent about the accident prevented a diplomatic breakdown, allowing the meeting between the two leaders to proceed as planned. This direct communication between Moscow and Washington established a level of transparency that helped the two sides reach the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty just 1 year later. By securing the reactors at the cost of his own life, Preminin ensured that when Reagan and Gorbachev sat down in Reykjavik, they were discussing arms reduction rather than managing the fallout of an environmental disaster. The loss of K-219 remains a stark reminder of the individual risks taken to manage the volatile technology of the Cold War.